Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and you have come to the right place this morning. Welcome to the Ready for Life Digital Festival 2021. I'm the Flying Dutchman. It's fantastic to be your host today for this opening forum. Now, today's event aims to inspire members to actively plan for retirement and to think about how they can continue to live a fulfilling life during these golden years of their journey. Now, beyond finances, a good retirement plan starts with finding out what you want out of life. Without further ado, let's welcome, please, Mr. Augustin Lee, the CEO of CPF Board, to deliver his welcome address. Mr. Augustin Lee.
Friends and fellow CPF members, a very warm welcome to all of you. I'm very glad that so many of you are able to join us today at this inaugural Ready for Life Digital Festival. We used to hold our retirement planning roadshows physically in locations such as shopping malls and town centres. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic made such large-scale roadshows challenging. But your attendance today at this forum shows that COVID-19 does not prevent us from gathering together to learn, to celebrate, and to cheer one another on. CPF is the bedrock of Singapore's social security. Since our humble beginnings in 1955, we have grown to become the 8th largest pension fund in the world, or 2nd largest in GDP terms. Through CPF, Singapore attained a high home ownership rate of 90%. 8 out of every 10 hospitalization episodes incur very low out-of-pocket expenses. CPF protects Singaporeans through many insurance products that we run, ranging from annuities to healthcare and mortgage insurance. If our insurance business was spun out of CPF, we would be the 2nd largest private insurance company in Singapore. These are reasons why CPF is well regarded internationally. For example, Mercer and the CFA Institute publish an annual Global Pensions Index to rank retirement systems worldwide. In 2021, Singapore remained the top pension system in Asia. But I know that all these macro achievements matter little to individual CPF members. To you, as our members, the most important things are not these accolades. What matters is your own well-being and whether you're living fulfilling lives. That's why CPF Board is bringing to you this Ready for Life Digital Festival. Quite understandably, there is a wide range of views when it comes to what makes for a happy and fulfilling life. In the US, one of the world's longest-running studies on this subject is called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. Contrary to expectations, the researchers found that the key to living a long, successful, and happy life was not the amount of wealth you had, or whether you achieve fame and success. Rather, a much more reliable predictor of long-term health and well-being was the strength of your relationship with spouses, family, and friends. People who felt they had somebody to count on when the going got tough were not only healthier, but their minds stayed sharp even as they lived to a ripe old age. So if you're looking for clues on what leads to a long and happy life, longitudinal studies like this help to point us in the right direction. Another way to think about what leads to a fulfilling life is to learn what regrets other people had at the end of their lives. There are many studies of this nature, but the findings generally cluster around a few categories. Top on the list was regrets over working too much and neglecting relationships and time with loved ones. Some were so busy working, they missed their children's growing up years. As a parent myself, I know all too well that they grow up so fast. Or others might regret drifting apart from their friends and family while they were busy building their careers. Now, one thing is for sure. At their deathbeds, nobody regrets not working harder. There were also some who regret living lives based on other people's expectations rather than the life they wanted. They regret the road not taken, the opportunities missed, They regret living the life that others wanted for them instead of what they wanted for themselves. Learning the regrets of others allow us to re-examine our own choices in life and make better decisions. A third way of discovering meaning and happiness in life is to observe and learn how other communities have done it. A prime example of this, and this is my personal favorite, is the Japanese philosophy of ikigai. There isn't a precise word in the English language for ikigai, but it can roughly be translated as reason for being. It is deeply rooted in Japanese culture, and the Japanese would probably think of ikigai more like a way of life. For example, the Japanese would say, it is ikigai that wakes you up in the morning, excited that on this day, you will do something that appeals to you. It might be playing the piano, gardening, reading poetry, cycling, writing code, doing home deliveries, or helping other old folks. Ikigai is what empowers you and motivates you. It is what keeps you doing what you love and what you're good at. Ideally, it is also what the world needs and what you can get paid for. When these four things intersect, what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for, you have ikigai, and each day will be infused with meaning. You will find yourself more grateful for the talents you have and appreciative of the people and things around you. Ikigai is the reason why many Japanese never really retire. They remain active and work at what they enjoy every day. It's the happiness of being busy. As Albert Einstein once said, life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you have to keep moving. In the midst of our busy working lives, many of us yearn for a time where we can just chill and do the things we enjoy. I know I do. But the time would come when you no longer have the same 8 to 5 work routine, when your children have left the nest. How would you imagine the days, months, and years ahead of you? This is important because we have one of the highest life expectancies in the world. Not only do we need to ensure that we have enough money to live on, but we also need to discover our life purpose so as to live meaningfully for several decades more. This prospect of retirement can be unsettling and disappointing if we don't plan in advance for our golden years. Therefore, in organizing this Ready for Life Digital Festival, we have drawn inspiration from the various approaches of helping people arrive at their purpose in life. And the result is a lineup of webinars and online workshops that we hope you will find useful and fun. We are very privileged this morning to have two speakers at this forum. Professor Paulin Straughan, Director of the Center for Research on Successful Aging in SMU, who will share the factors contributing to successful aging in Singapore. And Mr. Christopher Tan, CEO of Provident, who will share tips to help you navigate the complexities of retirement planning. At this two-day festival, you can also learn the joys of getting involved in volunteering opportunities, how to transition to a new profession or start a business venture. Do your part for a sustainable future by joining a nature group, or learn how to make DIY repairs of common appliances, or even by picking up a new sport, such as parkour or cycling. Every purpose needs a plan, and CPF is the foundation of that plan. For those members in the lower income, this foundation may be all they've got. From age 55, CPF will be like a rainy day fund from which they could withdraw some money for immediate cash needs. And from age 65, they will enjoy a monthly stream of income for life. For other members, CPF is the foundation on top of which they could construct their additional savings and investment plans, which they could then enjoy in their golden years. I would therefore urge all of you to make full use of CPF in your retirement planning. Do find out how by checking out our 3 CPF webinars on maximizing your money, taking charge of your healthcare costs, as well as legacy planning and CPF nomination. Finally, I wish you all a great weekend ahead. And I hope this festival will kickstart your journey to make the rest of your life the best of your life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Now, as we mentioned, we have an exciting lineup of webinars and online workshops this weekend, organized in collaboration with not only public, but also private and people sector partners that touch on both the financial and the non-financial aspects of retirement planning. Now, before I invite our next speaker onto the stage, we have a quick question, and the results will be revealed before the panel discussion. So here's where you get involved in the poll, okay? This is the question. In leading a fulfilling life, what matters most to you? Spending time with loved ones, giving back to society, keeping active and healthy, picking up new skills or knowledge, having lots of money, and finally, I can't decide, because there are people who really can't decide at this point. All right? So get involved in that poll. We'll get the results out to you just before we begin our panel discussion. Right now, it's time for me to invite Professor Paulin Straughan, Director, Center of Research for Successful Aging, for her sharing on advancing successful aging in Singapore, the power of social integration. Professor, please.
Thank you so much, and good morning, fellow Singaporeans. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm always very appreciative of the CPF, so it is a distinct privilege for me to be part of this very exciting program. Today, I speak to you as a sociologist who is now working on aging research. At ROSA, which is the Center for Research on Successful Aging, we are looking at ways to advance how we can move towards our third age and our fourth age with joy, right, and anticipation, and we will not fear growing old. At ROSA, we are an evidence-based research center. So every month, we speak to our Singapore Life panel members, and they are a representative sample of Singaporeans who are between the ages of 55 and 74. And it is, as far as I know, the only online monthly survey that is conducted in the world. So from an evidence-based perspective, we get data which will be able to advise us on policy. As Mark, our MC, alerted us, we are living longer. So thanks to a very, very robust healthcare system. But there is a lag between what we call health-adjusted life expectancy and longevity. So in layman's terms, it means that on average, we are losing about 9 years. We are living longer, but we are also spending about 9 years living with discomfort and disabilities. So at ROSA, our research endeavor is to improve health-adjusted life expectancy so that more of us will be able to leverage the increase in the number of years we stay on this earth and live impactful lives. CPF has been amazing. Right? As a Singaporean, I'm now 58, I think, right? I'm 58, and I'm in a comfortable situation where I don't have to worry too much about economic adequacy because of forced savings from CPF, right? So when I was younger, I begrudged, the 20% or so that was, withheld from my salary. I learned to live within my means. Now that I'm 58, I look at my CPF savings and I look back on how, because of CPF, I'm able to own a home. So I'm very grateful, right? And I'm sure many of you agree with me. So at ROSA, we argue that to live well and to be happy in our older age as we move from third age to fourth age, it has to be beyond economic adequacy because we are human beings, right? So if I ask you, what else is important for you as you prepare to grow old? Well, many of you will say, well, of course, physical health, because if we don't have good physical health, it's very hard to look forward to the next day. So that's the second quadrant, right, that we look at when we study well-being in Singapore. Then we also argue that It is the lenses through which we view everyday life that puts things in perspective. So we've always talked about, is your glass half full or half empty? And of course, it's better to take on a perspective where, every day we wake up and we say half full, and we can look forward, right, to filling the other half. So that's a psychological and mental well-being. And finally, as a sociologist, I would argue, that with vested interest, that perhaps most important is for us to have social well-being, because we are living within networks, communities, friends, and we need to be comfortable, right? We need to look forward to each day when you wake up, because you're living because someone else in your vicinity, in your life, looks forward to seeing you each day. So at Rosa, we look at successful aging from a multidimensional, multidisciplinary perspective, and we are guarding over the 4 quadrants of well-being. So today, I'm going to share with you the levers that we look out for to improve our quality of life from the social perspective. So CEO has pointed out, highlighted the Harvard study. Let me elaborate on what we have done in Singapore to advance our understanding of the importance of social integration on well-being. This is the beauty of data, right? Researchers like myself, we live for data like this because it gives us the evidence that we need to understand how older adults are progressing. The past 2 years have been tremendously difficult for all of us. And it's even more difficult for older adults because we had encouraged older adults to expand their social circle. The People's Association, for example, worked so hard to advance social activities to keep our older adults active and socially engaged. And then came the circuit breaker. Everything came to a stop. So if you look at the graphs, you can see on all the counts of well-being that we're documenting, overall, everybody suffered. When the circuit breaker stepped in, well-being went down, right? You can see the dip. And then when the circuit breaker ended, we were so relieved, and you can see well-being improving. However, when we look at differentiated experiences, we see that those who live alone have a much more difficult time compared to those who live with co-residents, right? The blue line signifies the well-being of those who live with families or friends, and the other line are those who live alone. So then the important question is, what can we do to improve the lot of all Singaporeans, regardless of their living arrangement? What can we do as a society and as a nation to ensure that as we leverage on improved life expectancy, we all can look forward to our third age and our fourth age without fear? Our research suggests that there's a lot of significance and impact and potential in this construct called social integration. So we find that, so this graph tells us, those of us who appreciate and who are connected with our neighbors, right? In our homes, in our living environment, we are comfortable with our neighbors, we talk to our neighbors, we know our neighbors well. Those of us who are in that privileged category enjoy higher life satisfaction. For those who are more socially isolated, then life satisfaction, is not, in the ideal state. You can see the gap there, right? Then we look at our built environment because, as a sociologist, I would look at, the social situation like an onion, right? Layers of information that we can tease out. So then we ask, what can improve, this connectedness with our neighborhood? So at the back of our minds is always, what can we advise government on with this data? What can we do in terms of meaningful, sustainable, impactful interventions to make it easier for us to look forward to growing old? And the answer, part of the answer lies in the quality of neighborhoods. So we ask our respondents, the Singapore Life panel, right? Within 10 minutes walk, do you have a supermarket, a hawker center, MRT station, clinics, etc.? So those who live in neighborhoods with amenities, important amenities, that facilitate everyday life, they have a stronger sense of cohesion to their neighborhood. And then, of course, when there's a stronger sense of belonging, it improves well-being, right? And then we go deeper. And we look at, the advantages of an aging society. We often see aging society, look at aging, as a liability, and that's just rubbish, right? When we say that there is extended life expectancy, immediately we think, we're going to have more human resources because more of us will be around for a longer period of time. And these are people who have lived a fruitful life, they are experienced, and we should leverage their experiences through volunteerism. Right? This is a potential resource that we have not yet capitalized on. So we ask, do you volunteer? For those who do volunteer in a sustained manner, they report higher life satisfaction and well-being. Amazing, right? And then finally, this period, my team and I are very concerned about our transition from a pandemic to an endemic. So we ask, are our Singapore Life panel members ready to embrace the endemic? And we find that those who report high social integration, so comfortable with their neighbors, they feel that they are appreciated in their communities. They also tell us, bring it on, we are ready. And we find that overall, for those who feel that they are important to their community, that they have a significant role to play, and that somebody cares that they are alive, they report much higher well-being. Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from you during the panel discussion.
If we look at what Professor Straughan just said, it is so interesting because one of my personal beliefs and why I'm very content with my life and where I'm staying, that whole neighborhood cohesion, is the spirit that we had in Singapore, and I think it's slowly coming back, that kampung spirit, that knowing everybody living around you. I think it's really, really important. And as Professor Straughan said, that is what some of her findings have brought up. So now we move on to our second speaker. He is CEO of Providend, and he's here to share living the good life through purpose-centered financial planning. Mr. Christopher Tan. Chris, if you will, please.
Well, a very good morning to each one of you, and thank you so much for joining us this morning for this CPF Digital Festival. I'm sure you have been greatly blessed by the two speakers, Augustin as well as Prof. This morning, I've been asked to speak on a topic maybe that's not so technical, but all the more important, and it is called how we can live a good life through purpose-centered financial planning. So just before I start, just a quick disclaimer, just to say that whatever that's shared here is really just more for information and financial education, because all of us, our situations are different, and therefore, please, before you take any action, do speak to your financial advisor. I want to start this morning by talking about the personal money equation. And every one of us, we have a personal money equation. And there are two sides to the personal money equation. And the left side starts with income. We all earn an income. And after taking away our savings, and after taking away our fixed expenses like our mortgage, our insurance policies, and maybe even our tax, we are left with what we call the variable expenses, which you can spend. And if we save, and our savings, we get the returns from the savings and the investments, then over a period of time, compounded over many years, then hopefully that will help us live our good life. So there are really two sides, as I mentioned, of the money equation, the left side as well as the right side. And a lot of people are more excited about the right side because it is the investment side. It is the side that gives you that returns. But it is also very important, and perhaps even more important, to focus on the left side. The left side is the boring, short-term financial planning side. It is the side that actually helps you become rich. A lot of people think that it is the right side that helps you become rich because that's the investment side. But it is really the left side, the short-term financial planning side, that helps you become rich. And thankfully, that is also the side that you can have better control, because we have better control over our spending, our expenses. This is, well, as opposed to the right side, which is really the long-term investment side. This is the side that actually helps us stay rich, because the whole purpose of investment is really not to maximize return. The whole purpose of investment is to help us beat inflation. So this is the side that helps us stay rich. But unfortunately, the investment side is the side whereby we have lesser control. I mean, we have no control over how the financial markets will behave. So there's the left side and the right side. And as like I said, the left side perhaps is the more important side because it is the side that you have more control. It is the side that really helps you become rich. And since the left side is the more important side, I'm just going to unpack the left side a bit more. As I mentioned, it starts with income. Now, what is it about income that's important? Because it's a fact that if you earn a higher income, well, you have a higher propensity to save. And therefore, if you want to focus on the left side, well, the income side especially, we want to be the best that we can be so that, if we are the best that we can be, then, well, there is a chance, there is a great opportunity for us to be promoted and to be earning a better income. And in order for us to have better income, we also must always remain relevant. We want to stay relevant, and I think this pandemic has taught us the importance of being relevant at all times. And as long as we are relevant, we are not afraid of a pandemic, we are not afraid of crisis, because even if we lose our job, we can always find the next one. And if we are able to add value, somebody will want to hire us. Now, while earning a good income is important, it is also very important to protect our income. And we should do that using suitable and especially low-cost insurance. Now, I'm not going to expand too much on that because today's session is not really about insurance, but I thought it's just important for us to know that as we focus on earning a good income, being the best that we can be, always staying relevant, it is also very important to protect our income in the event we are faced with life risks. So where you are right now, ask yourself this: are you staying relevant? Are you upgrading? Are you reading up? Are you keeping up with the times? Are you giving the best that you can be at your workplace? Because if you take care of that side, the income side, as I mentioned, you have a higher propensity to save. But as the saying goes, it is not how much you earn that makes you rich. It is really how much you save. Because you can be earning $10,000 a month, but if you spend $10,000 or $11,000, you're going to be poorer than that guy who maybe earns $3,000, but he can save 50% of his income. So the next focus really is on savings and expenses. And by that, I really mean that, we should live below our means. I'm going to say that beyond living within our means, because when we live within our means, maybe, we are earning that $3,000, $5,000, but we are also spending the same amount. But to live below our means that even if you have that income, even if you are able to live that lifestyle, you intentionally, you purposely live below your means so that you are able to save. And again, to do that, it may mean that we have to lower our debt. You may not want to buy that car even though you can afford it. And even though you may need the car, you want to buy a car, you may just buy that car that you need. You don't have to buy that super expensive one that perhaps you don't really need. Maybe you don't want to overextend yourself and buy a huge house and take up a huge loan, even if you can. because you really want to choose to live below your means. And in terms of savings, it is actually very important to always have an emergency fund. I think if there's anything we learned over the last 2 years in this pandemic, that it is really important to have a fund stashed aside for emergency, not just to take care of us because, maybe we lose our job, but when there are opportunities, and there are great opportunities over the last 2 years in the financial markets, you may have extra money to actually invest it. And if you take care of the left side well, the right side will take care of itself. We don't really have to worry about the markets. If our left side is taken care of it, well, we have the ability to ride through the markets. The right side will take care of itself. So I just want to unpack, the money equation just a bit more, because once we understand the money equation, then what does a prudent person do? What will you do if you say that you are very prudent? Now, a prudent guy will, of course, focus on increasing the income, and then maybe he will save, he will scrimp and save, and, keep his expenses low, because he wants his surplus to be very high so that he can live a good life in the future. And because he scrimp and save, he's earning a good income and saving as much as he can. Therefore, he doesn't need a very high return to reach his goal. He needs a low return because he has a lot of savings, right? So if we understand the mathematical formula, if you have a lot of savings, you don't need a high return to be able to achieve the amount that you need for a good life. And everything sounds good. It's great, right? What's wrong by being prudent, and what's wrong by saving a lot, living a very simple life? What's wrong? Well, what may go wrong is, what if we die today? Because, all of us, we don't have a contract with God, whichever God you believe in, right? If we save so much and we leave everything only to the end because we believe that life is linear, I study very hard, I work very hard, and then later on I'll retire and I'll play very hard. The problem is that life is uncertain. And tomorrow may be gone. And if we save everything for the future, we may never even have a chance to live that good life. And there are many things that we cannot save for the future. We have to do it now. Like building memories with our children, building memories with our parents. We can't push it later. So what? So then what? Well, perhaps, maybe you will say, I'll live it up now, I will enjoy my life today, so my expenses becomes very high, and therefore, unfortunately, because my expenses are very high, then I don't have enough savings. And if I still want to live the very good life in the future, then I'll need a very high return to do that. But as we all know, the higher the return you need, the higher the risk you need to take. The higher the risk you need to take, the higher the uncertainty of reaching your goals, the higher chances of it affecting your health because you're so stressed by the financial markets because of the risk, the higher chances of it affecting family relationships because, when the market goes downward, you are so stressed, you come back, you kick the dog, you're angry with your spouse, and the higher chances of it affecting your career because, you can't focus, when you see your investments going up and down, very volatile, the higher insensitivity to community issues. And if you have a faith, the higher insensitivity to spiritual matters. And that will lead us to buying things that we don't need. With the money that we don't have, we borrow to impress the people we don't even know or we don't even care. And I'll say that again. Buying the things that we don't need with the money that we don't have, so we borrow it and we become so stressed. For what? Just to impress the people that we don't even know. We will be gripped by money. We become what I call servant to money. And indirectly, we worship money because we will just go wherever or whoever pays us more, not necessarily being very happy with what we do. And if we do that, we will live a life of discontentment. But so far, we've been focusing a lot on the money side, the financial side. And it seems like focusing on the financial side is not the thing. Perhaps we need to ask ourselves first, what does it mean to live the good life? I like what these two authors said. They wrote a book called Repacking Your Bags, Richard Lader and David A. Shapiro. They defined the good life as living in the place you belong, with people you love, doing the right work on purpose. I'm going to read it for us again. And check yourself. Are you living a good life right now? living in the place you belong, with the people you love, doing the right work on purpose. And if we understand this statement, and I like it very much, we learn a few things from it. Firstly, living a good life is not about money. Now, don't get me wrong, money is important, but having a lot of money doesn't mean that we are living the good life. You don't see that money being there in that definition by the two authors. We learn that money is really just an enabler of a good life. It is not a goal. And it is not always about accumulation. If you want to live a good life, it's not always about having more. Sometimes it is also about decluttering, because if we look at our finances and we can adjust it, maybe we already can live that good life. And to live the good life, we need to make good money decisions. We need to make good money decisions. Yes, that is true. But we need to first make life decisions. We want to make good life decisions with regard to where do you want to live, who are the people that you love and you want to be with and to spend time with. What kind of work do you want to do now and maybe in retirement, and to achieve what purpose? And that's the question, and that's the focus of this festival, right? What is your purpose, or what do you want your purpose to be? And it is not just about the future, living the good life. It is also about now. So living the good life is not about scrimping and saving and leaving everything for the future. It is also about living the good life now. So perhaps living the good life, yes, I want to earn more income, I be the best that I can be, I stay relevant. Yes, I want to keep my expenses low, I live below my means, I make sure that I don't over leverage. Therefore, I've got huge surpluses. But the surplus that you have, my encouragement to you is don't just keep it everything to the future. Take a portion of what you can save right now. Think about some of these purposeful activities that are important to you right now and do it now, because life doesn't begin in the future. Life begins today. And after you have done that, do set aside some extra to live the good life in the future. And we have talked a lot about living the good life today, but I just want to quickly talk a little bit about what do I mean? How do you then make financial decisions to enable your future good life with money decisions? Well, you can see on the slide, if I reduce retirement planning to its irreducible minimum, there are three things that you must have in your retirement. Firstly, you must have a fully paid house. Secondly, you must have a suitable medical insurance to take care of yourself just in case you fall sick. And thirdly, you must have a monthly income to enable that good life that you want. And if you look at the orange portion of the slide, our CPF actually forms the foundation, because our CPF helps us fully pay our house. Our CPF, pays for the premiums for at least our basic insurance, such as MediShield Life and others. 65 years old, we can have our CPF life to give us that safe retirement income floor. That forms the safety net. And it's actually not bad, because if you top up your CPF life to the max, as a couple, when you turn 65, you can actually have about 4,000 as a couple or more, and that gives a very good foundation. And once you build that foundation, and that's not enough for you, and you are financially able to save and invest more, then perhaps you can upgrade your insurance to something that gives you better health care, go to a better ward or go to a private hospital, and then you can have a higher level of income. But your CPF really forms that foundation. And since I'm talking about in retirement, I just want to quickly talk about the 5 risks that all retirees face in retirement. Firstly, longevity risk, the risk of living too long. Secondly, inflation risk, and we all know what that means, the risk of our purchasing power going down. Thirdly, healthcare risk, the risk, not the risk of falling sick, but the risk of not being able to cope with medical expenses when we fall sick. Fourthly, investment risk. As we are older, we don't like to take that volatility risk anymore. And last but not least, overspending risk. There are enough studies to show that, retirees, when they first go into retirement, they're very excited, naturally, and then they may overspend the first 5 years of their life, leaving not enough in the future or for the future. Well, the good news is our CPF Life actually mitigate 4 out of these 5 risks. Longevity risk with CPF Life, healthcare risk, because we have MediShield Life, at least at a minimum, all Singaporeans and PR, we have got it. Investment risk, regardless of how the financial markets perform, we're going to get a monthly income from our CPF Life. And because it's coming monthly, well, it prevents us from overspending. And so again, you see, besides being the foundation of our retirement plan, it mitigates 4 out of these 5 risks. I just want to end with a little sharing on my realization with working with the clients over the past 2 decades of my work with them. The many clients that I've seen, money is not the problem. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, money is, it comes easily. No, I'm not saying that. But money is not the problem for a lot of people when it comes to retirement. I mean, if they save and they invest, they will get there. But a lot of my retiree clients, when they are retired, the key concern that they have is, what are they going to do? And, well, Augustin have shared earlier that, you can only play so much, you can only travel so much. Our kids will no longer be with us. And therefore, I'm going to encourage us, before we focus on those money decisions, take a step back and think about what you want your purpose to be in the next 10, 20 years of your life when you are fully retired. If that's too fluffy and too vague for you, think about, when we are there in the casket and our life is over on this earth, what do you want people to remember you for? Make that life decision first, and only after that, then you make money decisions to enable that life decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Very, very enlightening. Thank you. So we've talked about successful aging. We've talked about our financial planning. Now I want to go back to the poll that we did earlier. Remember, I asked you a question. In leading a fulfilling life, what matters most to you? Spending time with loved ones, giving back to society, keeping active and healthy, picking up a new skill or knowledge, having lots of money, and I can't decide. So you all came in and you got involved in the poll. Here, the 2 major ones, the highest ranked one is keeping active and healthy. And I think that shouldn't surprise anybody, because these days everybody is talking about keeping active, staying healthy, eating properly, looking after yourself. The other one that was ranked very highly is spending time with loved ones. Really shouldn't be too much of a surprise for any of us as we look at the poll. The ones that got a little less, giving back to society, surprisingly, having lots of money. I really thought, and I'm Singaporean through and through, I really thought that one would be a little higher. Picking up new knowledge and skills was also relatively low, as was I can't decide. So that's basically how the poll ran. So it's quite interesting. I do like the results. I like the idea that people want to stay active and healthy. I like the idea that people want to actually spend time with loved ones, because that is really one of the biggest and strongest things that you can do. And it gives me great pleasure now to kick off our opening forum with our panel. First of all, will you please welcome Professor Paulin Straughan, Director, Center for Research and Successful Aging. Thank you so much. We have Mr. Christopher Tan, CEO of Providend. Thank you, Chris. And we have Mr. Eng Sun Kai, Deputy Chief Executive Officer, CPF Board. Thank you. So let's begin. We've heard from Christopher when he touched on the good life in his sharing. So the question really is, what is a good life to you personally? Let's start with you, Professor. What is a good life to you?
As a sociologist, it is about having agency, right? I think all of us appreciate that you're not just a minion, in your existence and in your social environment, but that you have a say and you're in the driver's seat, right, of your life journey. I think that's critical, because once you have that sense of control, you look forward, right? You may reminisce about, good times that you have had, but each moment you're thinking of how to drive forward because you're heading towards, better stations.
What do you say, Professor, to people in Singapore who are under so much stress that they feel they don't have that control?
So that's the sad thing, right? Because I think that if I take a step back, right, and I've been working with government for a long time, right, as consultants and just, different projects that we do, I find that government listens. So in many ways, it's a pity when we feel that we don't have control, because in Singapore, all Singaporeans have a voice. You have to believe that, right? You have a voice. So when things are not going the way it should, it's important to realize that you need to speak up and you can wrestle the narrative back. So much of what we have to do as a young nation, 50 plus years now and moving towards the next 50, is learn how to articulate those needs so that it doesn't become noise, but rather constructive guides on what we want, our environment, our society to be like as we grow as a nation together. Right?
Christopher, what's your thought? What is a good life?
Yeah, I really subscribe to what the two authors said that I shared. That living the good life is being at a place that you belong, with the people you love, doing the right work on purpose. And it all starts with purpose. And that purpose for me really started in 2008 during the GFC. In the GFC, I saw how, a lot of people, because of money, especially in the US, their life was destroyed because they were, investing in all those structured products, CDOs and all that. And I still remember very, vividly that I was actually walking outside of the McDonald's at Tampines, and there was this inner voice that spoke to me and said, it's going to come to Asia. It's going to come to Asia. We are going to get richer and wealthier. And a lot of people is going to make a lot of their money decisions first and adjust their life to suit that money decisions. Right? I'm going to buy that big house, buy that big car, and I'm just going to work very hard, even though I don't like it, and then I neglect my families just to support, those money decisions. So at that point in time, I asked myself, I'm in the financial services industry. I have the knowledge, I have the experience, I have the license from the government to advise. I've got the clients that will listen to me. That's my circle of influence. So I find that, for me, that's my purpose. I really want to help people understand that, money is like a common thread that weaves through every aspect of our lives. And even though it's important, but please first make life decisions and before you make those money decisions. And because that's my purpose, then I ask myself, so where is the place that I should belong? Where is the place I can do this? And obviously it's this part of the world, Singapore, because I belong here. And it is this part of the world whereby I can have impact most. And my friends, my families, they are here. These are the people that I love. And the work that I do, I find it very purposeful. And so I think if I'm able to do that, and even as I go into retirement, I'm 51 already, and even when I go into retirement, if I can continue to be able to do that, then I'll say that I have lived a good life.
Interesting. Sun Kai, what's a good life to you?
Well, to me, a good life is certainly not about accumulating more and more material possessions, because that can bring about more worries on its own. A good life is a simple life. It is an uncluttered life. For me, it is about having peace of mind on the things that you need in order to have the freedom to pursue the things that you want. So for me, peace of mind is really about having a roof over your heads, having financial security, and having adequate healthcare coverage, because all of us don't know when we're going to fall sick. And when you fall sick, you want to be well taken care of. As for what I want out of life, and I'm sure many of us want the same thing, I would want to have good health. So that includes good mental health as well as good physical health. And that's not something that is going to drop out of the sky. It's something that we have to invest in, whether it's eating well, getting enough rest, And also, something we need to all invest in is strengthening relationships with our close family and friends. And that helps us to really have a good life. And finally, I think in order to have a good life, we need to stay young. Now, what do I mean by that, right? All of us actually have 3 ages. We have a chronological age, which is you count that from the day that you were born.
Okay.
You have a biological age, which is how fit or how healthy your body is. Yeah. And then you have a psychological age, which is how young you think you are. Now, I can't do anything about the chronological age, but I can certainly do something about the biological age by keeping myself healthy and fit so that I can get younger or I can stay younger biologically. And I can certainly do something about psychological age, which is to think like a young person, right? So to me, it's important to stay young in order to have a good life.
That's very interesting because I live by very much the same thing. My biological age is probably a lot older than I actually am because I'll eat anything, anywhere, at any time. But the idea of staying young has always been really, really important to me. I tell this to everybody. No matter how old you are or what you're doing, there has to be that little percentage that needs to remain almost like a child.
Look at my socks.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly.
Look at my socks. I'm wearing Mickey socks. Look at my banger. It's Pandora. It's my Christmas banger.
You see? You keep those little things around you that keep you young. And I think that is very important in the long term. I just want to go back before we get into our next question. Professor, after you spoke, I mentioned the kampung spirit and how I feel that is so important. I feel this because I'm an HDB dweller. I live in Choa Chu Kang, and we have a very, very kampung spirit, which I think is a bit surprising. Kampung spirit to the point where if my wife and I are out, and well, this was when my kids were younger, I could actually tell my neighbor that I'm out. My neighbor will come over, make sure my kids have eaten, make sure they do the homework, make sure they go to bed.
Wow, that's fantastic.
You don't. In your research, have you found whether this kampung spirit still exists in Singapore?
Oh, it certainly does exist, right? So from the data that we shared, those who are privileged to live in that kind of social setting. So we usually, typically we valorize the family, right? We put all this, attributes to within functional families, and that's why we encourage people to get married, have children, and so forth. But, increasingly we realize that we have to look beyond family because now family size is so small, right? So you have to look beyond family and you have to reconstruct a supplementary layer of familiar ties. And here is where your neighbors fill that for you, right, Mark? I look at Mark and I remember Radiofusion, right?
Oh my goodness.
As a kid, my grandmother had a set in her room and I was turned on to his I'm sure I called in to make requests.
You might have.
But it is about, being able to share, right? Social memories. That's what makes community. It doesn't evolve, it evolves organically, but it takes work. So part of that kampung spirit really is, getting together and curating memories, doing things together so that you can recall, right, that we did this together, my neighbors did this for us, and now I'm going to reciprocate.
That's right.
So yes, it does happen. If it's not happening in your neighborhood, remember, agency, you start today. You go knock on your neighbor's door and say, hey,
I love
a piece
that.
of pie?
Because no matter what it is, it always starts with you. Okay, Christopher, you spoke about it. When do you expect to retire? You said you're 51. When do you expect to retire, and how are you preparing for your golden years?
Well, I have to be very careful when I say this, because I think people who know me will not believe that, when I say I want to retire at 60, I will retire at 60. I think many Singaporeans today look at retirement very differently. It's not like our parents. And of course, our parents, they may not have the options. They do not have the privilege of education like we had. My late father was a bus driver, and when he retired, he really retired, and he has nothing to do. But today we have a lot more options. And so retirement for a lot of Singaporeans today is about financial independence. They know that they are not going to stop doing things. Yeah, but if they do something, it is not because of money. It's because they really enjoy doing that kind of work. So for me, I hope that I can be there when I'm 60 years old, because I do have obligations to my company, the people that follows me, and I've got a good 9 years, to build it up, before I do something different. Yeah, but it will not be called retirement for sure. Yeah, it'll be doing something that I really, really enjoy, and it has nothing to do with making that money to live a life. Yeah, it's just work that I enjoy. Yeah, so hopefully in 9 years' time I can do that.
9 years, okay. Yeah. Sun Kai, when do you think you're going to retire? How are you preparing?
Well, first I have to say that for me, retiring is not really about relaxing on the beach day after day. For me, the word retire, actually I will break it up into re and tire. So meaning that you get a fresh set of tires for yourself and you can embark on a new journey, right, after you stop your full-time work. And that's certainly what I intend to do. So there are just so many things that are available to us today in Singapore, if we have the energy and the health to do so. Whether it's picking up a hobby that you have left behind, and for me, that, for example, is taking up photography again, or it's helping vulnerable members of society, or even joining a community interest group. There are just so many things that you can do in Singapore, even during this pandemic season, right? So I certainly hope to be able to find new areas that can energize myself, rather than to retire and then just chill out and every day. But before I retire, I think we all need to refire, meaning that the transition into retirement should not be a sudden and unplanned transition. So we all need to fire ourselves up in an area that we are passionate about. So it could be, for example, helping out at a soup kitchen, or it could be supporting a particular charity organization before we leave our full-time jobs. And if you can ease yourself into another area that you're passionate about, I think it makes for much a smoother journey into so-called retirement, right? As for what I'm doing to prepare myself, certainly I'm using CPF as the foundation of retirement planning. So I take care not to withdraw too much from my CPF if I can. I take every chance to top up the CPF accounts of my loved ones. In fact, I just did it yesterday for a family member, and it was very fast. It was very easy. I used my mobile phone, and the whole thing was done in less than 5 minutes using a PayNow QR code. Okay. So that's how you can actually top up your CPF for yourself or your loved ones, right? And I think really just preparing for that season in life where you transit into a different area where you can still be passionate about something. So those are the plans that I'm making.
Professor?
No, you never retire, right? The notion of retirement it should be an archived word, because retirement equals social engagement, and that is actually not the right way to frame our progression through the life cycle. Some would argue that we should reconstruct what the meaning of retirement. Right? So in Rosa, we are looking towards that potential of volunteers. So financial adequacy, of course, is very important. You have to have enough because you have to live, right? But beyond amassing more and more, I think here is where financial planners like Chris and CPF, they're critical in advising us. When can we just relax and realize that you have amassed enough, sufficient, and it's okay to take a step back from paid work and then graduate and look forward to social engagement in the community, precisely because we want to play significant social roles. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So you're right, spot on, that it doesn't happen overnight. So you have to prepare for it. So our life journey should be a pathway of transitions. So we shift. So two things: if you are younger, right, then look forward to new pathways. If you are jaded at your job, don't worry, there are new opportunities. So I was at NUS forever, right? And then I always thought that I would retire at NUS. And then SMU called, and I go, ooh, that's exciting. It's a different type of job, different responsibilities. So there are many opportunities for us as we live longer. Okay. And I say, don't be afraid, right? And don't look at, growing old as something that is like, cast in stone and you have to wind down and all. Certainly not. In fact, it's time to step up, right? It's the time to step up to do things that you were afraid to do because you had financial responsibilities when you were younger. But then as you, work towards financial independence, then, start to live, right? And start to, leave an impactful footprint, right, in the communities you are in.
I think, people are watching us and I can hear this, I can almost hear the thoughts. That means I really never stop.
That's right.
And that to some people is worrying. I will tell you quite honestly, you've heard from the professor, financial planner, you've heard from CPF. For the longest time, I lived with massive fear of retirement. Because I was old school, retirement meant you stopped work. That was it, grandchild in one hand, second grandchild in the other hand, and that was your retirement. And it scared me because I have been a workaholic all my life. And it was very, very worrying. My wife would go, find a hobby, it'll be fine. But I felt a hobby wasn't good enough. So I had to stop actually and go back and go, what will make me happy in retirement? So I had to step away from grandchildren and things like that and go, what will make me happy? And I seriously think that when I eventually do retire, I'm probably going to go into mentorship. Because that's a passion. But I think the only way you're going to find that passion is if you can spend a little bit of time and step back and discover what it is you want. Otherwise, as a lot of people are thinking now, does that mean I just keep rolling forward? No, because when you're following a passion, you're not really rolling forward. Yeah. You're doing what you love to do. Right. So it's no longer a job. It's no longer tedious. It's what I want to do.
A purposeful life.
A purposeful life. So that's what we were talking about. So Sun Kai, I've got a question for you. Please remember, if you have any questions, you can go to our chat box and lay the questions down, and we'll put them before our panel. Sun Kai, your question, how can I make better use of my CPF to plan for my retirement?
Yep, thanks for that question. And first of all, I would like to say that actually CPF is a very well-regarded system internationally. So according to the recent global ranking by the Mercer and CFA Institute, CPF was the top-ranked retirement system in Asia.
Wow.
And we scored very well on adequacy, sustainability, and integrity. So what that means is that for the CPF member, you have a very well-designed system that's working for you, right? And you can take advantage of this system. You don't have to do very much if you don't want to because it's already very well designed. So for example, if you choose not to invest the monies yourself, just leave it with the CPF and it will earn you a risk-free rate of up to 5% per annum if you are below 55 or up to 6% per annum if you are above 55.
Which is exactly what I'm doing. I just didn't touch it.
And when the time comes for you to exercise certain options within CPF, for example, if you reach 55, you want to decide how much to set aside for your retirement, there is a lot of information available on our website. We will also get in touch with you to tell you and to discuss the options with you. So those are some of the things about the system, which I thought I would want to introduce first. But broadly, there are three things I thought that every CPF member can consider to make use of the system. Now, first of all, is topping up for yourself and your loved ones. So as I mentioned, topping up means that you can enjoy risk-free interest rates of up to 6% if you're above 55. And this allows you to compound your retirement savings at a very strong rate. You can also enjoy tax relief on any cash top-ups that you make to the system. And for your loved ones, it means that after you have topped up, they get to enjoy higher retirement payouts. Now, a few days ago, CPF Board announced that we have, for this year, we have just crossed the $4 billion mark in terms of top-ups by CPF members. And that is significantly higher than the $3 billion that we received from members last year. Now, all these members will enjoy the risk-free rates, and they will also enjoy higher retirement payouts when they reach their payout eligibility age. Secondly, to make use of the CPF system, if you are above 55 and you're not in a rush to withdraw your monies, then you can actually leave your monies inside the CPF system to earn the risk-free interest rates. So you don't have to rush to withdraw it if you don't want to. Conversely, you can actually use some of these monies to top up to your retirement account, and then you will be able to get higher payouts in retirement. Thirdly, for our younger members, I would say that you have a much longer runway to take advantage of interest compounding, right? So start early, start small. You may be working in your 30s or your 40s, but if you have some spare cash, do consider setting it aside in a CPF. You can top up very easily, and once you top up the monies, it will earn the risk-free interest rates year after year. If you are using CPF to pay for your monthly installment for your housing, you can also consider using some cash instead of just using CPF. And the reason for that is that cash is not earning very much now by leaving it in the bank deposits, right? So, but if you were to conserve your CPF ordinary account funds, it will earn actually 2.5%. In fact, there's an extra interest of 1% on top of that. So if you can, consider using some cash for your monthly housing installment. Don't have to use all your CPF and conserve that. You can still use the ordinary account savings for your next property if you wish to. But otherwise, it will go towards your retirement savings as well and help to raise your retirement payouts.
Yeah, this is exactly what I told my children, because they've just got their, two of them have just got their flats, and I went, you don't have to use all your CPF, you know? And they were trained from a very young age to make sure they did save. Good thing. I do want to remind everybody of one thing, though, here, and I think it's very important. When we were preparing with this, I was talking to some people from CPF, and I just want to bring it up here because I think it's really, really important. If you have not made your nominations for CPF, please go and do it. It is the simplest thing to do. You can do it online, takes a couple of minutes, and it's done. But please make sure you get those CPF nominations done. I think a lot of people still haven't done that. So, Professor, next, what can I do to encourage my peers in society to look forward to active aging? A lot of people don't look forward to getting old because they don't see it as active aging.
Yep. So before I jump into that question, I thought to add to CPF's deliverables, right? One of the things that I've downloaded recently is the CPF app.
Yes.
Right? So I think, you know, as an ordinary, you know, member of society and not part of CPF, one of the worries we have always is, where's my money, right? Is it safe? You know, I don't know where it is. So with the app, it's actually quite brilliant because it renders visible all this forced savings, and then you see it grow, right? And so I see my son, who has just entered the workforce, staring at his CPF, oh, this is good, you know? But coming back to you know, how we can encourage each other to look forward to growing old together. I think there are two levels that we need to talk about. The first, of course, you know, is at the individual level, right? Because I'm all about agency. I'm all about being the community busybody, right? People ask, students ask, you know, what does a sociologist do? And I pause and say, we are professional busybodies and we are paid to be busybodies. I mean, just a wonderful job, right? So it is about that, right? It is about all of us, you know, as we, you know, let's say if you're a younger person and you're looking at your older parents, right, who may, after exiting from paid work, you know, find that they're a bit lost and they don't quite know what to do. Here's where, you know, it's important for those of us, you know, who are connected with older persons, to encourage them, right? And it's not just, with verbal encouragement. We need to walk the talk. So do it together. So in our interviews with our ROSM panel, right, the Singapore Life panel, we do qualitative interviews as well. And some of them tell us it's important to encourage, each other to do volunteer work. However, it's very difficult to do it on your own. It's a bit shy, how to show up at an agency and say, I want to help, right? So a lot of activities that we do, for leisure, in the social realm of our lives, we do together with each other. So here is the importance then of encouraging each other by, when you go out, bring a friend with you. When you go for an event, bring a friend with you. You're logged on right now, make sure that, call a friend to say, hey, join me in this very exciting festival, right? So that's one level where we play, each of us have an important responsibility to those around us, right? So we encourage each other on. And the second is, the activism, right? It's very important to be an activist. If you're not an activist, then you should, fire up, that desire to contribute, right? Your ideas. So it is then about asking ourselves, we want to encourage more older folks to come out, right? And to engage in social activities. What do we need to do, right? What kind of architecture do we need to have in place so that it's easier for them to step out of their homes, right? And come into safe spaces publicly, right? And, gather together. So here is where I think, in your neighborhoods, in our neighborhoods, where we see that there are gaps, where there are, for example, vacant spaces available and no one is really making good use of them. Do you have an idea? Can you imagine that space being like, for example, a nice enclosed mahjong room, for the community? And if you do, then that's what the MP is for, right? Go to your MP and say, hey, MP, here is something that, perhaps we can do together to curate, safe spaces for older folks who may not have friends to bring them along, for neighbors to come together and normalize that kind of kampong gathering, right?
Interesting. We're getting a lot of questions coming in. We've got a couple of questions for you, Christopher. First of all, should we have mini retirements throughout our lives instead of the only one retirement at the end of our lives? If so, how does CPF come in for this kind of retirement?
Yeah, it's a good question, really. And I really agree with what Prof has said just now, that this word retirement should be archived. Because, the word retirement seems to give you that idea that, I sit down and I do nothing. I just retired sort of from my national service just March this year. And when I was there attending the ceremony, they put my rank and they put a bracket there, retired, And when I saw that, I actually really hated it because the word retirement seems to suggest that, you are now good for nothing. You don't do anything anymore. And the reason why I say this is because I don't think we should look at life like having mini retirements. It's just different phases of life, really, right? And it all starts with purpose. And that's what we are really trying to tell the audience this morning, right? That, it all starts with having a purpose. And if you know your purpose and you know the kind of life that you want to live in the next 20 or 30 years, regardless of your age right now, don't plan to do all these things towards the end of your life journey. You can do it along the way. You can do it 5 years after you start work, and then another 5 years later. I mean, you plan yourself when you're going to do these important things because we never know when we're going to be gone. And some of these very meaningful things, like I say, you can't do it anymore if your children, they have grown up or they are at a certain age of their life whereby they have to be in a school, for example, right? So yes, I think it's good to think like that. If you want to use the word mini retirement, okay, but I don't want to call that. I just want to say that, you plan for different episodes in your life to fulfill your purpose. But obviously that takes planning because the reality is we need money. We need money to be able to sustain that life, and we need to still have enough to save towards the future. So that takes a lot of planning, cash flow planning. And in today's world, especially the pandemic, we have learned that we can work remotely. It doesn't mean that you have to not work. It may mean that you can still be in your job, in your company, but you just work in another country. You just dial in. I mean, we are doing that for the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
No difference, right? So, well, you need to plan. You need to make sure that, well, if you can have an income in those mini so-called breaks. It could be a 1-year break, it could be a 2-year break. If possible, still have an income. If it's not possible, plan early, have the cash flow, save up enough. That also means that your lifestyle right now, you've got to keep it simple, spend below your means to prepare for these mini breaks. For your CPF, as much as possible, when you still can, I mean, Soon Kai has mentioned that, you top it up, because CPF is really your safety net, right? If you top it up to the maximum right now in your special account, for example, 186,000, which is the full retirement sum, you're just going to let it roll, and you know that going forward in the future, that safety net, that foundation of your retirement is already taken care of. Yeah. So CPF play a part in that way. So I think it's a really good idea. I think the young people today, and even the not so young, they are in a very good position right now to plan for it. Live your purpose. Don't delay it until when you are 60, 70. I mean, do it now while you still have the energy to do it. Yeah.
Okay, the second question is quite interesting. I call our society today the checking society. We check Instagram every 2 minutes, we check Facebook every 5 minutes, and we check our smartwatch every half an hour. So the question has come in, how often, and this is for you, Chris, should we review our financial plans while planning for retirement? And do you think that a passive income is just a myth in Singapore today?
Yeah.
So first, how often should we check?
I think if you have a good advisor and has put in place a good financial plan for you, and let me just say that a good financial plan is not about, I bought this insurance, I've done this investments. That's just product, right? But a good financial plan should actually chart the roadmap for you to do these different things. And I think at the least, you should review it once a year. I mean, that's at least what we do, once a year. Take a look at how your investments are performing, whether they are on track, and all that. And also take stock of your life and see whether any things have changed.
Yeah.
Right? So that's very important. So at least I would say once a year, take a look at your plans. And when there are significant life events, maybe you have children, maybe marriage, things like that. Significant life events, they are a good stop pit for you to sit down and say, these things have happened. How does it change my view about my life and my purpose? How does that change the way I make my money decisions? So yes, so that quick answer is at least once a year or when there is a significant life event. Passive income, the word passive income sometimes, has people have a wrong understanding of passive income. There aren't many things that give you passive income per se. I mean, yes, if you put your money into CPF Life, yes, in a way it's passive. If you buy an annuity, it's passive. But some people think that, if I buy stocks and shares, I get a dividend, I buy bonds, I get coupons, or I get involved in some MLM business, I got passive income. If you think about it, it's not really passive. You have to do some work.
It's true.
Right? If you are into MLM, you have to manage your team.
Yeah.
If you are investing into stocks and shares and bonds, you need to watch or at least make sure somebody else watch your investments.
Yeah.
There's some effort involved to have that income. It's not something you sit down and you do nothing and you expect income just to come.
True.
Yeah, so that's my thought on passive income.
I just want to go back to your checking once a year. I have a financial consultant who works with me, and we check every quarter. Is that too much?
I think it's a bit too much because, we don't expect a lot of things in our lives to change every quarter. That's one. And it's not a good idea to check your investment too frequently.
Because you begin to worry, don't you?
Yeah, and you should not, because a lot of things can happen in the financial markets in the short term. And if you are investing in stocks and shares or equities, right, you are actually investing in real companies. And on a day-to-day basis, and this is not from me, this is Warren Buffett, he says that on a day-to-day basis, the stock market, is a voting machine.
Yeah.
Right? It's about sentiments, the fears and greed, right? Yeah. In the long term, the stock market is a weighing machine because the value of the company. So I don't think we should watch our investments every quarter. I don't even think that, you should be too worried, that, this year my investments have done badly because that's the stock market. You don't expect a straight line. It goes up and down. Yeah. So you've got to expect that.
True. Soon Kai, we were talking about passive income. How do you see CPF Life being a passive income How does CPF help with the passive income?
Yeah. So I think maybe the way to think about it is not really passive income, but the income that can give you peace of mind. And I think CPF Life certainly does that in a few ways. One is that it is lifelong income. So regardless of how long you live, it could be to 100 years old, even beyond 100 years old, you will always get a monthly payout from CPF Life, right? And you don't have to worry about it because all the monies are invested with the government and they are invested in risk-free instruments. So you will always be able to get that income for life. Right. So in that sense, I think CPF Life gives us peace of mind. If I could just circle back earlier to an earlier question on how CPF actually helps with people who might be taking some time off. Right? And a lot of what I've talked about is about CPF, about how CPF helps you in old age. But actually, if you think about it, CPF is also there working for members during their working lives. And what I said earlier about not totally using up your ordinary account savings for housing, if you do have some OA savings and you take time off work, you can actually continue to use your OA to service your housing installments. So that allows you to have some freedom to not have to work continuously and yet be able to pay down your housing installments. CPF is also there if any member or your loved ones fall ill and you need to pay for hospitalization bills. That also helps to give some peace of mind in terms of not having to worry about who's going to pay for the medical bills.
Okay.
So CPF is not just for old age, but is there working throughout every member's lives as well.
Interesting. There are some questions on what happens to members' CPFs when they turn 55 and whether CPF will contact them. Can you go through that again so people can understand what happens when I turn 55?
Yes. So when you turn 55, the amount of the CPF savings that you have built up in your accounts will be set aside for your retirement. At that point in time, you can consider how much you wish to set aside in your CPF. So today, we have the basic retirement sum and the full retirement sum. We also have the enhanced retirement sum. So if you wish to, for example, top up your retirement account at 55, you can choose to do so at that point where you can top up your CPF account to 1.5 times the full retirement sum. And this will give you about $2,200 in monthly CPF Life income from age 65 onwards. So you can take that decision at age 55 to top up to your CPF account, or you can choose to perhaps transfer some of your savings to your spouse as well, right? So that both of you can enjoy CPF interest rates. And this is especially useful if your spouse has not been working and accumulating CPF on his or her own, right? So you can transfer some of that so that both of you can enjoy CPF interest rates. Now, as for contacting, I would say that there's a lot of useful information already present on our website, so you don't have to wait until you're 55, right? We recently revamped the CPF website. Now it's a lot more personalized. If you log in, you will find a lot of personalized information that's helpful to you. We have a lot of retirement calculators, tools, planners, all for members' use, right? So I encourage all our audience to go in and take a look at this revamped CPF website. But for those who are turning 55, we will contact them and we will let them know what options are available to them at that point in time. So not to worry, we will provide you whatever information you need to know just before you turn 55.
Okay. As you know, I'm a little bit telepathic. I can hear the questions coming in. 55, I can do the transfer. Can I do that transfer anywhere between 55 and 65? Or do I have to do it at 55 and then I can't do it?
Yes, so certainly you can do so at any point from age 55 onwards. So whether it's transferring some of your CPF to your spouse or topping up in cash or adding more to your retirement account so that you can have a higher payout, you can do so at any point from age 55 onwards. In fact, topping up is not just limited to those above 55. Where even if you're age 25, 30, the option is there for you today. In fact, the younger you are, the stronger the effect of compounding there will be, right?
Yeah.
So certainly it can take place at any point in time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Professor, question for you. If our parents are unable to be active physically due to old age, what are the other alternatives which can give them a sense of purpose? What can we do?
So at ROSA, right, we look at a multidimensional understanding of well-being. So physical well-being, there are limitations, right? I mean, if you live to your 90, for sure, there will be some, biological limitations and so on. So we focus then on the other quadrants of well-being. So for example, social well-being, you don't have to be physically able to have healthy social networks. So we now, the last 2 years have taught us how to connect digitally, right? My mom is 89 years old, so thank God we bought her an iPhone right before the circuit breaker. So during the circuit breaker, she was checking on our Facebooks, she does WhatsApp, and of course, safety is an issue. So every week, we do go through her phone to make sure that she's not being scammed or anything like that. And we'll block certain numbers, that are suspicious. But so we can, leverage, I think, the virtual engagements, right? Safe online platforms where they can continue, to be part of a community without physically having to be there, right? So this is what she does now. And she's able to, conduct. They have Bible lessons, for example, online, and every Thursday morning, don't call her because she's glued to her iPad, listening, to what the coordinator is saying. So there are ways to engage, and we just have to exercise our social imagination. And the worst thing we can do is say, "Oh dear, so old already, cannot lah," right? That's bad word, never say that. I think that's where, the enabling, I think, powers of the community becomes very important. Not necessarily your mother or your father or your relatives, but even your neighbors around you, right? At some point, for us to thrive, right, and to be a nation where we embrace longevity, I think all of us have to step out of the privacy of our own lives and our own homes, right, and be that busybody and take on this very broad perspective where where we believe that the well-being of people who live around us, within our vicinity, is part of our responsibility.
But don't you think that's going to take a bit of work? Because we are, Singaporeans generally very conservative, very closed. Suddenly you get a neighbor going, "Hey, hi, I just moved in." It's not like America where I can go over and go, "Hey, hi, can I borrow a cup of sugar?" Here we're a little more conservative, a little more closed. How do we get past that?
So we have to learn, right? I mean, life is a series of progressions. So you're right in that as we moved from the real kampongs, in the 1960s and probably early 70s into HDB flats, right? Then suddenly your neighbor is like just down there, and so we all bottled up and we all locked our doors and for fear of the intruder and so forth. And so we took a step back. We were living with a community, and then when we shifted the masses to dense housing options, then everybody preserved their privacy, right? Because everybody values that privacy that is called home. And as a result, over the years, especially when we're younger, then we shut out community, right? All the doors locked, the curtains drawn, because this is my private home. But then, as we learn, as a nation, as a community, as we grow and mature, we realize that this 2 years taught us a lot, right? It really taught us so much. The lessons from the pandemic we must never forget. During the lockdown, oh my goodness, we suddenly yearn for interaction.
Yes.
Right? It was so sad. I remember thinking to myself, I never dreamed that I would live through a period, where the malls all shut down. I'm a Molly girl, right? So I love malls, and malls all shut down. And then, you go out and everybody is, social distance, everybody with masks on. And as a person who thrives on social engagement, I was like a fish out of water. It was very difficult for me. And then, of course, then I started thinking, so what disturbs me about this scenario? That human interaction, right? The importance, and this is the period where I think many Singaporeans stood up and made it work, right? We affirmed each other, we affirmed our frontline heroes. We started to pay attention to those vulnerable members who have been left behind because the inequalities have been rendered visible, more visible now. And I think many Singaporeans, in their own way, did their part. And are still doing their part, right? Looking out for their neighbors, affirming the good work of frontline, workers and professionals and so forth. So I'd say, don't stop. Let that trajectory, normalize, and be part of our Singaporean DNA, right? And for those, so coming back to the question, if you see those who are vulnerable, who are not able to participate in a traditional manner, then think. This is, in a way, the pandemic also reset a lot of things, and we're given a lot of blank spots now. So think creatively. What do we need? What kind of new intervention, what kind of infrastructure do we need to step into this new phase of supporting each other?
Nice. We're also getting quite a few questions on inflation. Sun Kai, how does CPF help mitigate the risk of inflation? And the other question that came up, which is quite interesting, can we join CPF Life after 65?
Yep, thanks for that question. First, I just wanted to clarify something I said earlier about how much you can top up to your CPF after 55.
Yeah.
So the basic retirement sum is currently $93,000. And after 55, you can actually opt to top up your retirement account to $279,000, which is 3 times of BRS. So that is the amount that you can top up to in order to enjoy the maximum payout from CPF Life.
Okay.
Right. So, and in fact, quite a number of members have already opted to do that and are enjoying higher payouts. Coming back to the question of whether members can opt to join CPF Life after 65, let me just share first that at 65, members are automatically included into CPF Life if they have at least $60,000 in their CPF. So they don't have to do anything, they're automatically included.
When you say in their CPF, are we talking ordinary account, retirement account?
The combined
amount, okay.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And
so I'm automatically in, because nobody called me when I was 55.
Right, I mean, this is for members who are turning 65.
60, oh, turning 60, okay.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, so for older CPF members, they have a choice to opt into CPF Life and enjoy the lifelong payouts, enjoy the attractive risk-free interest rates. In fact, you can opt to join CPF Life so long as you're below the age of 80. So anyone can opt into CPF Life. Right?
Okay.
So there is no minimum balance, but of course, the more you put into your retirement account, the higher your CPF Life payouts will be.
Okay.
Right? On the issue of how does CPF help to mitigate the risk of inflation, we do it in a few ways, right? So let me start with CPF Life.
Okay.
We currently have 3 plans. So 1 is the escalating plan, 2 the standard plan, and 3 the basic plan. Now the escalating plan is a plan that allows you to enjoy payouts that increase by 2% every year, right? So if you are currently receiving a CPF Life payout of, say, $1,000, the following year, that monthly payout will increase by 2%. And it helps to mitigate against the effects of inflation, because as we know, over time, the effects of inflation does build up. And historically, we have seen that inflation does eat away at your purchasing power, especially if you're in retirement and you're no longer earning an active income.
Yeah.
Right? So if you opt for the escalating plan, it will continue to increase at 2% per year for as long as you live.
Okay.
Right? So to me, that is the most suitable plan if you're concerned about the effects of inflation. However, if you prefer to have level payouts, and you don't mind that over time, your payouts will be able to buy less goods and services for yourself because of inflation, then you can choose the standard plan, which will start off at higher payouts, but it stays stable throughout your life.
Throughout your life.
Yes. And then you have the basic plan, which is a legacy plan that offers lower payouts, and it will actually decline over time as well. Right? So for members who are concerned about the effects of inflation, my suggestion is to consider the escalating plan, which can provide you with some degree of protection in your retirement. Now, I also wanted to mention that every year, the basic retirement sum is actually adjusted to take into account the effects of inflation as well as rising standards of living. Right? So, for example, currently the BRS is at $93,000, but we have been adjusting it by a few percentage points each year to reflect and to take into account the effects of rising cost of living, how much retirees may need to spend, as well as some increase in the standard of living.
Okay, so if my, again, I'm hearing the voices, they're coming to me. If my account is, your minimum is 93,000, and I have that 93,000, next year it goes up, and I have an ordinary account, do you automatically take from my ordinary account to match the increase, or do I have to transfer?
Yeah. So first of all, let me explain that for members who don't have the basic retirement sum in your retirement account when you turn 55, you do not have to top up in cash.
Okay.
We will take whatever you have in your retirement account and translate it into monthly payouts when the time comes, so from age 65 onwards.
Right.
However, if you would like to receive higher payouts, you can opt to transfer your savings from your OA or from your SA, for that matter, if you're still working, into your retirement account, and then it will then boost your retirement payouts when you start your CPF payout.
Right, so the transfers are done by me. It's not an automatic transfer to match the minimum sum.
No,
so I would have to do that.
I think this word minimum sum in the past.
In the past, yeah.
Yeah, we have changed it, I think, in 2016 to call it the retirement sum.
Retirement sum, yeah.
The word minimum sum somehow gives people the misunderstanding that if I don't put in this minimum sum, I don't
get anything.
Or I will be penalized.
Yes.
The government will force me to top it up.
Yeah.
That's why it has been changed to retirement sum, because what is 93,000? We just give a name to it, right? And it's called basic retirement sum. And it doesn't mean that you cannot top up to 100,000. No, it doesn't mean that. It's just that 93,000 is the name we call basic retirement sum, and 2 times of BRS we call it FRS, full retirement sum, and 3 times of BRS we call it enhanced retirement sum. Look at it this way. This is the amount that you are allowed to top up to. Right?
Ah, got it.
So if you are before 55, you are allowed to top up to your full retirement sum in your special account today, which is 186,000. When you reach 55 and above, you are allowed to top up to the 279,000 today. But what Sung Kai is saying is that every year, this allowable amount goes up by 2%.
By 2%.
Yeah. So now, next year, if you now, your special account doesn't have enough, next year is no longer 186.
Yeah.
Next year, you're probably allowed to top up 190, 192,000 thereabout.
Yeah.
So look at this BRS, FRS, whatever term we call it, and this increase in 2% as the amount you are allowed to top up to.
Yeah.
And if you aren't going to do that for whatever reason, you're not going to be penalized. I mean, the only thing you will be penalized is that when you reach 65 years old, because you put in lesser, naturally, when you withdraw out, you get lesser.
You get less. Thank you, Christopher. By the way, Chris, we have a question for you. Are there other ways to beat inflation? especially for those who do not have investment know-how.
Yeah. So I think actually Song Kai corrected me on that because in my presentation, I didn't mention that CPF is one way to beat inflation. But if you think about it, right, I mean, Singapore inflation, about 2% on average, and it goes up maybe 3%, right? And well, if you want to beat inflation, CPF is a good way because what you are getting today from your ordinary account is 2.5 to 3.5%. For your special account, is between 4 to 5%. Right? And it's guaranteed, and the capital is guaranteed. And I often tell people to look at the CPF scheme not like a scheme. You look at it like an instrument. I mean, which instrument in the world today, Sing dollar base, gives you 4 to 5% guaranteed, capital guaranteed, AAA risk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the suggestion by Prof that you have an app, because today when you invest, you have an app and you look at how much you invested.
That's true.
Now you look at the CPF app, you say, not bad. My investments is, gaining this traction and all that.
Yeah.
So CPF is one good way actually to beat inflation, especially when you are accumulating. But I think beyond that, because as much as you love CPF, and I mean, now you know that, the top up is like $4 billion. Everybody knows now it's topping up. But the bad news is that there is a maximum you can do it. And if you want to use other ways to do it, unfortunately, you have to take the investment route, right? And I mean, equities is a very good way to beat inflation. Of course, the hard assets are good. I mean, if you are investing, I mean, people talk about hard assets such as gold, they talk about properties or things such as commodities. I mean, because when inflation goes up, these things become expensive. So it's actually a good way to beat inflation. However, as we all know, when it comes to investment, it brings along risk. And I think that it is actually very important for you to understand, to have some investment know-how. I'm not going to say that if you don't, go and find an advisor and outsource it. Even if you are going to do that, you are a delegator and you want to get an advisor to do that, it is your own money. And it is best that you spend some time on financial education. I mean, events like this to learn, read books, so that you can partner your advisor, understand some investment options, understand the risks, and then you start investing. Because that's a prerequisite, I would say, before you take your investment journey, because that's the one that's going to help you beat inflation.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but right now, a financial advisor cannot tell you what to do. He can suggest what you do.
Well, it's a very thin line, right? When we advise, right? Of course, I can't force you to do it, but when I advise, right, I actually will tell you specifically what you should do, right? A good advisor will not say like, you got A, B, C, it's up to you.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a doctor. You see a doctor and doctor say, I've got 3 types of drugs for you.
Which one do you want?
You choose it yourself, right? And it's like, I'm not a doctor. You're the doctor. You tell me, right? And then the doctor will tell you, okay, A, B, C, these are the side effects. I really suggest C, but it's your choice. And of course, you make your choice. So it's the same thing. We tell people exactly what to do. We give you the ups, the downs, the good and the bad. Ultimately, we will have to take a position for you. But then, of course, it's your money and you decide.
At the end of the day, I just wanted to bring it back to that, because at the end of the day, it is your decision.
It's your money.
Professor, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I mean, all this financial investment things flown all over my head, right? So, but I think there's another important part of the equation that we should not ignore, and that is a good look and re-look at what we are comfortable with in terms of our quality of life.
That's right.
Right? And surely it cannot always be, wanting to maximize and grow our assets. But an important consideration really is to take stock of, how do you adjust your quality of life and your expenditure to a level that you're comfortable, right? So that you don't have to rely on higher risk investments to fund, this particular lifestyle, and to return to, a way of life that is within our means, and we look at, other important aspects.
I don't know, Professor. I think maybe for the younger ones, they understand that. But I think for some of the older people, it's sort of entrenched that more money means better life.
It may not be. I mean, that's why I during my presentation, I said that it's not always about accumulating. Right? It's about first sitting down and say, what is the kind of life, and like what Prof said, the kind of quality life that I want. And then I calculate the amount that I need to live that quality life. And you may realize that actually by just spending lesser, I'm there. I don't really have to invest in all these high risks. I mean, what's the point of investing if you can't sleep?
It's interesting. It's interesting because a lot of people I speak to tend to equate more money, better life, which is why the poll we did right in the beginning, where a lot of money was so low, actually surprised me coming from an Asian country. It actually surprised me because so many of us think we spend so much time chasing the almighty dollar.
Right.
So it was a very interesting thing. Excuse me. One final question before we wrap up. Well, a couple of questions before we wrap up. Professor, how do I strike a balance between my passions and my work if I have no choice but to delay my retirement and continue working?
So sad. I mean, it's such a blessing, you know, if you enjoy your work, right? Because if you enjoy your work and if you enjoy, you know, the people you work with, the work environment, and you can look forward to going to work each day, it makes it a lot easier, of course, to stay, you know, economically engaged. However, you know, if one is not in that privileged position, there are two options. The first is we now live a life where we have many careers, right? So it's never too late to then take stock. You've been doing this job and doing it well for a significant portion of your time, of your life, but you're not finding joy in your work. It's a pity, right, when that happens. So not a bad thing. Don't throw in that resignation yet, but look around, right? Take stock and see, is there something else that would excite you, right? And now we have a lot of training programs, right, at midlife, right, where you can reskill, retrain, upskill, all the buzzwords are there, and there's, you know, financial grants, you know, to help you make these transitions. So that's something that we can opt to do. The other, really, and, you know, many of my friends and myself, right, we've been fighting for work-life balance for the longest time because we believe that, you know, out of the 12 good hours, okay, let's say if you sleep 8 hours, right, and then you have to take care, you know, grooming, keeping yourself clean and all that, another 4 hours, you have to feed and all. So out of the other, you know, 10 good hours that you have, surely not every hour must be at paid work. Right? So we've been, you know, fighting very hard to ensure that private time is not used as surplus work time, that, you know, it is your premium time. So that's the balance that you can strike, right? You do your best at work, and then you make sure that you keep a good part of your day, of your week, invested in leisure activities, things that make you happy, right? It could be, you know, volunteering. It could be just engaging with friends, you know, making sure that, you know, you lock in time over your weekends and your evenings, doing things that bring you joy. Then I think that would work.
And I think with that point, this also applies to colleagues and management. You need to be able to give your fellow colleagues and your employees that time. Yes. There are some countries in the world that have made it a law where you can't contact someone after work. I don't really see that ever happening in Singapore, but, you know, you're going to have to, as people, just have regard for other people. One final question. A final piece of advice you would like to give everyone. Professor.
I think that we should not just be stuck in the busyness of everyday life, because we all have multiple responsibilities. You care for your children, you care for your spouse, your parents and so forth, and then you work, right? And so Singaporeans are very stressed out because we feel that we have so much to do every day. We have no time to think. That's bad, right? You must always have time to take stock, and you must always have time to reflect. And as we progress from, you know, for those of you who are younger, from your second age to third age, it has to be a purposeful, planned trajectory. It doesn't just happen overnight, right? You don't want to wake up one day and realize, oh my goodness, I don't have to go to work anymore. What am I going to do now, right? So I think we always have to, that's why having, that belief in the power of agency is so important. You are in the driver's seat, right? You are in the driver's seat of your life trajectory. So you do your best, right, to plan ahead and to dream and to have aspirations on where you want to see yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And wherever you can, take proactive steps to prepare for it. Financial adequacy is certainly an important one, and thank God for CPF, because even if you don't know anything about investment like me, you still have money because of CPF, right? Then, take care of your physical health, because without physical health, there are limitations, right? And then that social and mental capacity, don't take that for granted. Mental well-being is so important, and that's one area where we have neglected, right? We just think that the brain and our body can take whatever that comes. That's not true. So if you can still see that little gray line that you cannot cross over, you are good. Now, make sure you never cross to the other side, okay? Where you lose, rational thought and rational decision-making abilities. And of course, that social aspect of everyday life, you can control, right? It's okay if you don't like people. It's okay if, you just are happy with a small group of trusted friends. That's fine. But invest in those relationships. Invest in friendships. Sometimes we take our spouse for granted, for example, because after all, we married in the church, so we're bound for life, right? And that's it. Once we get married, whatever. That's so wrong, okay? So never take, the treasured relationships that we have, be it a spouse, a child, a good friend, or a neighbor, for granted, right? Those require investment. So Chris has talked about investments, in the financial sense, but I'm going to just remind you that, social relationships require investments as well. So it may just take a quick WhatsApp text to your friend to say, I'm thinking of you, and let's get together, and mean it, right? So invest in your social relationships, because the payoff will be tremendous.
Christopher, last bit of advice.
Just before I talk about the last piece of advice, I thought it would be good for me to clarify. This morning, I think I made a lot of mistakes. I need a caffeine fix. So when I talk about topping up our special account before 55 and topping up our retirement account after 55, I didn't mention that we can top up to the BRS or the FRS and the ERS. And I said that the amount that you can top up goes up. I mentioned earlier 2%. Let me clarify, it's not 2%, it's 3%.
Okay.
It's good news, it's 3%.
Yeah.
How do we come up with the 3%? 2% is really to mitigate inflation, and 1% is actually to sort of like take care of the improvement in lifestyle that we want. And what do I mean? I mean, if you ask our parents, whether when they retire, they need a mobile phone, back in those days, you'll say it's crazy, it's so expensive, right? But today, you cannot imagine ourselves retiring without a mobile phone.
Trust me, I've been asked for laptops and tablets. Yeah.
Somebody said, if you have no wine, don't talk about retirement to me. So it's 3%. So the amount that you can go up, you can top up to your special account and your retirement account goes up by 3%.
Okay.
Now, with regard to the question on final advice, right? I'll go back to what the author said in their book, Repacking Your Bags. The good life is defined as living at the place that you belong, with the people you love, and Prof stressed a lot about that. You need to invest in them, doing the right work on purpose. So wherever you are right now, if you're listening to this, sit down and ask yourself, what does that mean to you? What does living at the right place mean to you? Where is that right place for you? Who are the people you love? What are the things you want to do to invest in the people that you love? Not just your family, but your friends. What is the right work for you that you find it very purposeful to do? Make those life decisions first. And after you make your life decision, then you go and talking about how do I adjust my financial side? What financial planning I need to do, what investment I need to do, so that I can live that good life.
Yeah.
Don't do it the other way around.
Yeah.
Don't start to go and buy stuff, invest in things, buy a big house, drive a big car. And then we get so busy in life, we adjust our whole life to support those financial decisions. Because life is going to be a disaster if you do that. Yeah, so that's my final take.
Soon Kai?
Yeah, I would say that Singaporeans are living longer, right? And that is actually a good thing. But as Singaporeans live longer, in fact, now we have one of the highest life expectancies in the world.
Yeah.
There will be many uncertainties and things that you can't predict ahead of time. So we do need to take steps to prepare for the future, right? And I would say that CPF is your dependable partner in this life journey, right? To help you to meet your essential needs as you get older, of financial security, of home ownership, and of healthcare coverage, right? So you can be ready for life with CPF. And I encourage all our audience to think about how you can identify your purpose and think about how CPF can then partner you to realize your purpose for your life. I mentioned the CPF website that we have recently revamped. So now there's a lot of useful information, planners, tools, calculators there. I encourage everyone to go in and take a look and to avail yourself to the information that we have put up. So that's, I think, my advice, to really make full use of CPF as the foundation for your retirement planning.
It's very interesting, if you all have been following this. The key word today is foundation. And foundations are so important. I'd like to thank our panel, Professor Christopher, Soon Kai, thank you so much for being with us. I'm the Flying Dutchman, and I'd like to say thank you to everybody for being with us. I do hope you've enjoyed the entire morning. It has been such an incredible morning. And please, everyone have an inspiring weekend.